Let's continue working with our bowl and the small teacup that we started last class. To get started, get your items out, unwrap them carefully, get a canvas board to work with, and just separate them all out. You can see here I'm just quickly using my finger to get the worst of the bumps, indents, indentations, all of those things smoothed out. I have not put any water on this. I'm just working it exactly how it came out of the bag. If I start putting water on it, while you might think that will help your smoothing, it actually delays the process because it makes your project even softer and more bendy or malleable and more prone to distortion and damage from your fingers. So try at all costs to avoid putting any water, and by all means, don't put slip on it to smooth. So I'm going around the rim as well, taking my finger and just smoothing the top as well as the bottoms and the side, or the bottom and the sides rather. Then you can see me taking my blow dryer, turning it on low, and I'm going to begin to remove the bowl from the form. And I'm going to figure out a way to lodge it in a place, or I guess just tilt it up so that the blow dryer is hitting the inside of the bowl. And so I had to use a couple things here to kind of keep it from blowing away. And while that is blow drying on low, I am going to start working on my teacup. So just like the bowl, I am using my finger to smooth out the inside because that is where the liquid is going to go, and we want to be able to see how nice and smooth the bottom of the teacup is. I'm just grabbing another small piece of clay, nice and soft, and I'm going to begin to fiddle around with it till I get the shape I want of a handle. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do when I first started rolling this coil. I kind of not even sure exactly if I thought I was going to do a braided handle, or here I experiment with folding in half, but I'm realizing it's kind of still not right. And so I just kind of started all over. So what I decided to do was kind of roll a thicker coil and then flatten it just a little bit so it becomes kind of like oval or rectangular all the way down. So you can kind of see me just shaping it until it gets about the length of, I don't know, kind of like a short finger, maybe. Remember, it's going to be a handle, so it has to be comfortable to hold. So it should have no rough edges on it. All of the corners should be kind of smooth. Now I'm kind of testing to see if it's as long as I want. I'm actually going to be going for like a half heart handle. There's a few different types of handles you can use. I tend to like the half heart because I can get one or two fingers in it. And there are others like the C. You can see there, it is pretty much, I'm trying to form it into the half of a heart. I think I need to bend the top down a little bit more. But anyway, once you get it shaped into the C or into the half of a heart, kind of set it aside. Make sure there's a little bit of air blowing on it, but don't let too much air blow on it because you don't want it to get bone dry. And that's a lot of times students will put the blow dryer on things, and they kind of lose track of time. And next thing you know, they're whatever they're blow drying is rock hard and bone dry, and then it's just waste because you can't slip and score anything to bone dry. So now I'm taking my rectangular piece of clay that we rolled out last class, and I'm beginning to put it into the circle to check the diameter to see if it would fit the teacup. And I realized at that moment, oh my gosh, my bowl is getting a little bit too dry. So I changed the direction and I'm putting the air on the outside of it. So I went looking for some tools. I thought I had a serrated metal rib here at home where I'm working, but for some reason I couldn't find it. So I'm using a needle tool and I'm going to score the top rim of the teacup that I started. And I want to make sure it's really nice and rough so that it will accept the slab rectangle that I made last class. So get that all scored up and set it aside and rotate my bowl around a little bit. Oh, I can see the edge was starting to become bone dry. You can tell because the clay starts to turn color, and if it starts to get too white, that means it is bone dry and you've gone too far. So don't let yours get bone dry. All right, so I am at this point going to get my slip ready because I'm going to be using it when I attach this rectangular slab to the top of the teacup that I started. So I'm going to score it really, really well. Remember, it's kind of like the messier your scoring is, the better it's going to hold. So if you're trying to be nice and neat with your scoring, forget it. Get over it. Make it messy. And with slip, remember sometimes less is more. You can see that I didn't control very well and I squirted too much out too fast and it kind of went in the bottom. So spread it where you need it to go. And then you're going to carefully work that rectangular slab onto the top rim of the teacup. So remember the 4S process is score, slip, stick, and smooth. So the sticking part is the one where a lot of times students do not really take far enough. They'll kind of put it together like that, and then they think, oh, it'll stay. Well, no, it doesn't. You really, really need to take your time and blend the clay together. So you see me here cutting off the overlap, and I will score and slip both sides of those together. And then once it's joined together, that's when I really take quite a bit of time and I smash clay from one side of the slab into the other side. And so it's again, it's one of those things where if you're doing it super nice and neat, you might be doing it wrong because in order to join it really, really well, you have to align the clay particles. Clay particles are flat and you need to be able to smash them into each other in a way such that they are laying flat against each other. And sometimes the only way to do that is to kind of mess them up or sort of take them out of the situation they're currently in and realign them with the new situation or arrangement you want them to be in. So anytime you're going to smooth on a clay, you need to support the opposite side. So you can see I need to join these two pieces together and I'm supporting with my left hand as I'm working with my right hand. So I'm grabbing clay from one slab and smashing it into the other slab. Turn it over, support it from the underside. So always support from the opposite side. I'm pressing from the top, so that means I have to support from the bottom. Otherwise, it's just all going to come apart. All right, once it's basically into shape, I am going to prep a small coil like a little tiny worm because I want to make sure where that joint is, I want to make sure it does not come undone, either from just me working it in my hands or, goodness sake, if it comes apart after it's been fired or if it gets a crack in it and if I can never use it as a teacup like it was intended. So take the time, put a little extra clay in there from a coil on the inside, and it's also from the outside. Now I'm going around on the inside and I'm joining the bottom rounded part of the teacup up to the straight slab rectangle that I placed on, and I'm really, really scraping it together. So I'm pulling clay from one into the other. Now it's time for the outside. Same thing I did on the inside. I realized as I started, oops, I was not supporting it. So again, as you're pressing from the outside, you've got to support on the inside. I'm dragging clay from the rectangular slab down into the teacup part. Sometimes the plastic might want to get in the way, so you have to be very careful to try and keep that out of the way. Just push it to the side. Remember, your best tools are your hands, so don't be afraid to get in there and work it. But again, you see me supporting on the inside. Always, always, always support the opposite side that you're pressing on. Now I'm going to take the whole thing and kind of press down into the table. Let my hands grip on to that slab and press it down to really secure it on. Then back to the smoothing on the inside. So I'm just kind of truing it up, making sure that I can get it as round as possible. And then I'm just going to clean up my area because mom always said, clean as you go. All right, I am going to change direction. I need to get this under the blow dryer and I want to be blow drying my handle as well, but keep the handle out of the direct line of the air because otherwise the handle will dry too fast. And if it becomes bone dry, it is absolutely useless. So I'm looking for some tools that I can use to do some cleanup. So the tool I settled on was this flat wire loop tool, and I'm testing to see if it's going to do what I want it to do. Depending on the hardness of my clay, it may work really well or it might not. If your clay is too soft, it will not work. It's a pain in the neck. And so it was working for me, but I knew I could do better. This tool right here, this cleanup tool, is more of a favorite of mine for this type of thing. So I can turn it sideways and scrape the rough areas off the rim of my little bowl. So you can just see me spending a few minutes doing the cleanup of the rim. Don't go on too long without cleaning your area because remember, clay dust is not good for any one of us. So you can see me slowly taking this clay dust that I have been scraping off and I am scraping it into the bowl that we were using as a mold and set it aside. Then I'm going to take, well, You see me turning my teacup. Now I'm going to grab my elephant ear sponge into my cup of water, get that sponge nice and wet, and then wring it out. You do not want the sponge to be dripping with water. If your sponge is dripping with water, you've got too much water in it. So now I'm just spending some time all over the outside, going in circles and back and forth, back and forth. And you'll see I dip into the water very, very infrequently because the idea is that you are using the sponge to pick up the clay and from the high areas and redeposit it in the low areas. So you can see me right here trying to scrub kind of clay from the high area and redeposit it into the crack that was left from, or the crevice or the indentation that was left from the plastic wrap when I took my clay out of the mold. Don't forget to watch your teacup at the same time. Keep rotating. I've got the blow dryer set to point so that it's hitting the inside of the teacup because remember that is the softest clay down at the bottom because it has been against the plastic mold ever since you made it. I'm checking, testing to see if it's drying how I want. If it is sufficiently drying for you, then take the mold off and take the plastic off so that you can start to expose that wet area to the heat. I'm going to set the bowl and the handle aside and turn my attention to the teacup. And what I'm going to do now is work on really joining where we attached that rectangular slab to the base. So while the clay is soft enough, I'm going to really be pressing it from one side into the other. If I wait to do this any longer, the clay is going to be too hard to really align those clay particles and let them sit flat against each other. You can see that I'm attempting to use my table to help really press in the side, reform the profile of the cup to get me the exact profile I want. There's a little ridge around the outside I'm not too pleased with because I didn't blend it as much as I wanted to. I honestly think I was trying to rush it and go a little bit too fast, but good things come to those who wait. Perseverance is a thing, so be patient with it and keep going. The idea is that the outside of your teacup should be nice and smooth. There is an important concept called user experience, and as somebody is using your vessel, you want them to have a good experience with it. It should be easy to hold. It should feel good on the lips as they drink the beverage. It shouldn't be too heavy. It shouldn't be too light. The profile should be comfortable, and it should be easy on the eye as well. Once I've got them joined, I'm putting it back on the heat a little bit, double check my handle, and I realized, oh my gosh, my handle had been subjected to too much heat and it started stiffening up in a shape that I didn't actually want. So if I dip it into the water a few times, and as the water starts soaking into the clay and softening the handle, I can gently begin to shape it back into the half heart handle that I wanted. Don't want to press too hard because if it snaps and breaks right now, I'm in trouble and I'll have to start all over. I think this will work. So One last bend, and then I'm going to set it aside. And I'm going to set it way aside from the direct line of the heat and back at it to the outside of the bowl. As you go, don't forget to turn the teacup. Don't let that heat be directed at one side of the cup for too long. You don't want any part of that cup to become bone dry. So I'm showing you right here how to take the elephant ear sponge and kind of bend it in half along the top rim of that bowl. Because again, you don't want any sharp edges whatsoever off on a vessel that someone is going to use for food. If you put a little scoop of ice cream in here and it ends up melting, and you end up just putting it up to your mouth to drink it out of, you do not want to cut your lip or your tongue with the edge of your bowl or a cup or a mug. So nice and smooth all over the entire thing. I know I think I've said it before, but building something is only the first part. Building something out of clay, it's the easiest part. It's the smoothing of the items that you make that really turn the craft into the art. We don't want to just be a craftsman. We need to elevate what we're making and really make it an art. So details count. Craftsmanship counts. These things are no different than if you were to go into the trades when you get older. If you decide to be a surgeon, a dentist, no matter what you end up doing, details are likely going to be significantly important, a large, large part of your final product. Who in the world would want to go to an orthodontist who didn't spend time fine tuning the details of how your teeth will actually align? All right, so once that is all smoothed up enough, go ahead and set it aside. And now we're going to turn our attention to the teacup. And once again, I am looking around for a tool I can use, and I think I'm going to try my flat metal rib, and I'm going to hold it perpendicular to the surface of the clay and scrape it along the sides to really get the bumps and nicks and dings out. It was kind of working, but I thought, hey, I'm going to try this loop tool and see if that will work better. And so it kind of did a little bit, but ultimately I'm going to use my cleanup tool. And so I'm just scraping along the side so that I can reduce the hills so that the difference between the hills and the valleys is really minimized, because we really want a flat, smooth surface, not undulating curves or hills and valleys going up and down. And I'm going to spend quite a bit of time working on that upper lip because, as I talked about, you want your users to have a good experience interacting with your vessel. And for a teacup or a mug in particular, that upper lip where it touches your, or the upper rim rather, where it touches your lip is so important. Because if it's rough, you are not going to enjoy your beverage. And so, in as much as you may put your favorite hot cocoa or espresso or whatever you're sipping on, um, it's going to either be made better or worse by the vessel that you are drinking it out of. So let's try and make it the best experience possible. Get your rim smooth. Once you're finished getting the worst of the ridges, dense dings, and hills scraped down, then you can use your sponge with a little bit of water, go round and round and round, or back and forth, up and down, to get it super, super smooth like a baby's skin. So you see me here taking this flat wood modeling tool and kind of tapping it onto the side. That's because the side, the profile, in my opinion, still had this little ridge on it. And by tapping on that ridge, I can kind of use this wood tool sort of like you would use a hammer to hammer in a nail. I'm hammering the side in so it doesn't poke out along that one little ridge that I was seeing. So then I kind of roll it on a clean surface to see if that can help get out some of the ridge as well. You just want a really nice and clean side profile. I could still see it, so I took my metal rib, and since the clay is getting stiffer, it's easier to do this. So I spend a few minutes scraping along the side, trying to get the high part scraped off. And you can see as I scrape off some of that clay, I kind of smash it down on my canvas board. You just got to remember to clean your canvas board before you put it away. So once I feel like I have enough of those ridges taken off, I'm going to go back to smoothing by hand and the sponge. Alright, so it is pretty close finishing this up. Next step is to think about the handle. So I think this is good to go. So I'm going to grab my handle And then in order to attach the handle, it's the whole process of 4S all over again. Score, slip, stick, and smooth. And not only that, you're going to see me roll two small coils and wrap the handle at the top and the bottom and really smash everything together super well and blend from the handle to the mug, from the mug to the handle. Then put the coil on and blend the coil into both the handle and the mug so everything is super sturdy. And please remember, you cannot hold your teacup by the handle until it has come out of the kiln. Do not attempt to hold the handle while it is leather hard or bone dry. It will come off, it will fracture and come off. You could break the entire thing, or you could put a structural crack in it that you might not see until after it is fired. So you do not want to run the risk. So do not hold it by the handle. So you see me scoring the mug. I'm going to roll the coil here so that it's ready to go to attach. So once it is pressed on really, really well, and I have begun to scrape from one side to the other and really blend, the rest of the project is really about um, smoothing all those finishing touches. So you can see that I'm really trying to make this transition between the mug and the handle nice and smooth and seamless, so that there's no rough edges and it just looks natural. So I'll check to make sure that I'm still looking at a round teacup, checking to make sure my handle is protruding correctly, and then I'm just going to work on smoothing. And that's it. So just lots and lots of smoothing, lots of time with the finishing details. At the end, I have carved my name, or my initials, and the date rather, on the bottom of both of these items, just to kind of mark the moment in time. I enjoy looking back to see the progression of my skills, or where my mind was uh, in certain years, and kind of gets me thinking about, you know, what was I doing that made me think of making this item, or oh, look how smooth this item is, or oh no, this handle wasn't made so well because I can't hold it, or small things like that. But Again, I was just shaking my hand there. Don't hold it by the handle. Don't hold it by the handle. And of course, store them upside down for firing so they'll dry thoroughly.